Can everyone see my screen? I'm thinking yes. So, I'm sure Chris Russell scared you to death with how easy it is to get and misuse a certificate. So I'm going to provide some tips and pointers for making it more difficult. So let's get started. So what is Active Directory Security Services? It's the backbone of the PKI in the Windows environment. And you've got to harden it to help prevent and stop certificate-based attacks and other compromises. So we're going to do attack prevention. We're going to look at compliance. And we're going to talk about a few things that you can configure as you're creating templates and as you're setting up CAs or auditing your CAs to make it more difficult for the attackers. So offline root CA. Most of you will have a two-tier certificate services instance. You'll have the offline root CA and then your online enterprise or issuing CAs. So the best practice for the root CA is to keep it offline. Do not ever put it on a domain controller. And because you have it offline, you're only going to pull it back online for issuing your CRL, and that's generally once a year, and for patching and backing up. So when you do your backups, you're going to keep that backup secure like you would any other privileged account password, key for a PK or API, anything like that. If you can, store it in your PAM. If you can't, store it in a highly restricted area and make sure that your backup operators can only restore the backups when you give the okay. Now, the next thing you need to do with your offline root CAs is when you bring them up, you're always going to verify the system time to make sure that it's correct before you do CRL publishing, before you create new certificate templates, before you issue new certificates. You don't want to get in a place where a certificate is not yet valid when it's something like an issuing CA that you're trying to get back online because your certificate for that one expired. And then patching, you need to patch it at least once a year. You may want to do it more frequently if there are certificate authority patches in the Microsoft security patching. And before you back up, before you patch, you need to do a backup. And then once you patch, you need to do another one and keep those backups safe. So your online CAs, these are the ones that issue the certificates for servers, users, regular computers, your SSL certificates, and a number of others we could talk about. The only thing you want on those issuing CAs is what is necessary for security and what is necessary for the CA configuration. So disable non-essential services like print service. If you can, enable the Windows firewall. Make sure you're patching these regularly and that you maintain patch management. You don't want it to get behind if there are CA patches. And then for your database, make sure you perform regular backups. You can do the backups with whatever your backup product of choice is. You can always perform a database backup from within the certificate services MMC, and make sure you test your restoration procedures. You can bring it up in a separated environment. Make sure you can start certificate services. Make sure you can open the MMC, look at certificates, and maybe even do a test revocation of something. But it's as important to test your issuing CA's backup process as it is for any other server in your organization. So, certificate template security. Chris talked a lot about bypassing this. So I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk about what we need to do to secure templates. First thing you need to do is take an inventory. If you have published certificate templates out there that are not being used, delete them. I don't care how secure they are or you think they are. Someone can figure out a way to use them against you. Look at the permissions on the remaining templates. So if you have a risky template that lets authenticated users or domain users enroll, then Chris has got you. Manual approval. If you can, and you should, for things like web servers that you allow subject alternate names or enrollee provides the name, set it where a certificate manager, and that's someone who can issue and manage certificates with their account, has to approve that certificate before it's issued. It's an extra step, but it will help prevent attackers from just willy-nilly issuing a certificate that can be anyone or anything. And then least privilege, the least amount of permissions possible for whoever needs to enroll in that certificate or modify that certificate template. So, certificate lifetime. We've all heard about the SSL certs going to reduce to 200 days next year and then eventually down to 47 days. That's going to be a little hard on us when it comes to renewing certificates, but the reduction in the lifetime reduces the length of time a certificate is available when it can be abused. If you can implement a short certificate validity, if it's your internal web server, set them for 1 year instead of 3. It'll make you take a look at it every year. And then renewal policies. Establish clear procedures. If they're renewing for a web server and your certificate manager knows that renewal is coming, they're more likely to get it to you on time. You're more likely to get the correct SAN, whether it's a renewal or a new one. And look at your expiration dates. You need to make sure that it's long enough that you're not renewing and changing out certificates what seems like every month, but a long enough lifetime and easy enough renewal policy that you're renewing when and where it's appropriate. Last thing we're going to talk about here is the revocation strategy. If you know a web server has been compromised, revoke the certificate, publish a CRL, monitor for usage on that certificate. And if you've got a newer issuing CA, set up OCSP for real-time validation. Don't wait for the CRLs that are published once a day or once a week to catch up. So this is that subject alternate name, the enrollee supplies subject risk. So if you've got a web server named server 1 and you're trying to run your Fulcrum website on it, your subject alternate name would be www.fulcrum.com or whatever you choose. You want to make sure that it's not requestable by just any user. You need to make sure that the certificate template requires certificate managers to approve it, because self-supplied SAN entries, they can impersonate anyone. There are days when Chris Russell wakes up, asks what he wants to be, and says, I think I'll be a domain controller today. Let me find someone's environment to do that in. Security. Use the highest level of security, cryptographic security, that your clients and recipients can use. 4096 is great. 2048 is okay. I would put that on an internal web server, but it wouldn't be my most precious web server. Okay, now we're going to talk about auditing and monitoring. You can, when you're configuring your CA, configure all of the auditing. Backup and restore, change configuration, issue and manage. All of these logging settings are interesting during an investigation. But even when you enable them here on the CA, you must also enable the edit object access using a group policy for that issuing CA. So don't forget to do both parts. It's one thing to turn it on, it's another for it to actually work. Okay, so you want a SIM or something to integrate with your security and collect your logs and tell you about interesting things. And that's generally suspicious activity, anything out of the ordinary. A user applies to be a domain controller. And then you want to make sure you have appropriate log retention. 30 days is probably not enough. I would go for at least 90. And then last, you're going to want to do a regular security assessment. When you do those, focus on new templates and on identifying the vulnerabilities that may have crept in over the last 90 or 180 days as your issuing CA is a work in progress. We create new templates, we use new templates, as Chris would say, tradecraft changes. You may get wind of something that's happening out there that you can prevent with security patching, tightening your templates, and so forth. So here's one of the tools I use to run a security assessment against the templates and the CAs in my organization. It's also put out by PKI Solutions, and it's PKI Audit, PowerShell PKI Audit. You download it from GitHub. Do not download it from anybody else. You're going to import the module and run it with enough permissions to generate the report. And I'll show you a copy of the report in just a minute. You can query for, it will query for the security permissions. It will look for misconfigurations. It pulls the information about the CAs from Active Directory, and it creates an audit report. And I'm going to show you bits and pieces of one. This is what it looks like. And with this one, it has looked at SA Cert 1. It found that it's not the root. It's not doing, the certificate for it did not allow user-supplied SANs. They didn't see vulnerable ACLs on the certificate authority. And most of the enrolled principals are authenticated users. And then authenticated users are allowed to enroll. Built-in administrators can manage the CA and manage certificates, as can domain admins and enterprise admins. It didn't find any misconfigurations, and it found no vulnerable certificate templates on the CA. But here's the kicker. This is not a guarantee that the CA is secure. It's a confirmation that you have followed the best known information available for making your CA and your templates secure. Now, this is what it looks like when you have a certificate template that is not secure. This one, anyone can enroll in it. It has the enrollee supply subject or allow SAN. It has authentication EKUs, and the issuance requirements do not require a certificate manager to approve it. So these are who can request the certificate. And the misconfiguration it sees is called ESC1. Now, you go to the SpecterOps certified pre-owned, and this is it, 143 pages of deliciousness. You search for the ESC1, and you start looking at what it takes to be an ESC1. So it's going to say there are no issuance requirements. We're not requiring a CA manager to update, and say yes to issuing the certificate. It has the enrollable client authentication or smart card logon, and it has the enrollee supply subject flag. And then the document will tell you what that means and where in the document you can go to get more details. Enterprise CA grants low privileged users enrollment rights. Generally, that means domain admins or authenticated users can get that certificate. There's no manager approval, no additional authorized signatures. It's allowing all kinds of EKUs that it probably shouldn't. And it's allowing to specify a subject alternate name. So if that's a web server certificate that you're not requiring certificate manager approval to issue, then they can be your website. They can use your SSL information. They can do all kinds of interesting things. So that shows you some about PSPKI audit. It's just one of the things you can use to look at misconfigurations. And it does present an audit report. You can always run one that shows all of your misconfigurations. You get those all cleaned up. You can run it again and hopefully get a no misconfigurations found. That will at least show that you've done what you can with known information to prevent certificate hijacking. So, future developments. For the first time in years, Microsoft has a dedicated team working on certificate services. They want to do updates for quantum computing. They want to do enhanced cryptographic algorithms. They want to do updates to certificate services itself. There are potential fixes and modernization coming. The Cert Enroll website has been broken for several years, where a user could go to the Cert Enroll website and request a certificate. Well, because we no longer use IE with ActiveX, that website does not work. And if it does work, it works poorly. And then there's the certificate lifetime reductions. So with the shorter validity periods, they want to improve the renewal process and enhance the overall certificate security posture. I'm looking forward to all of these because most of the documentation for certificate services hasn't been updated except for minor changes since Windows 2012 R2. And it would be nice to see what else they've got on the books and in the wings waiting on us. So here are some additional resources, and these will be hyperlinked in the copy of the deck that you'll be able to download later. These are all Microsoft. And this is an introduction to securing PKI, what you do if you have a compromise, how to properly delegate permissions for cert managers that are not also domain admins, and then recommendations by impact. So if you need to go in and get the biggest bang for your buck on what to fix first, that recommendation, this list of recommendations will help with that. Critical security considerations. So we've already talked about risk mitigation. If you can secure your templates, use certificate managers to approve certificates, clean up the permissions on who can request certificates, that will mitigate some of your risk. The enrollee supply subject flag is the impersonation risk. But if your certificate that allows allows a SAN, has to be approved by a certificate manager, it's one more step in the process to make sure the certificate is going to the right support person to be installed on the correct server. and not used against you. And then permissions and issues. Try not to use ever authenticated users to get a certificate. If you have to use something, use domain admins. And if you can get away with a more restrictive group, use that. So it's not just about configuration. It's about building an infrastructure that can prevent the Chris Russells of the world from taking over your domain. I haven't seen any questions pop up, but I'm not sure I know where to look for that, Kaylin. But we're open for question and answer at this time. I know that was a fairly speedy presentation, but there's not a whole lot to say besides certificate managers, cleaning up your permissions, and restricting subject alternate names when you can. You see what's in. So, oh, customers and industry getting ready for the new cert expiration rules. If you are concerned about how many web servers you have internally and externally, and how many people it's going to take to update those as they get shorter and shorter lifetimes on those certificates, look into a certificate lifecycle management tool with automation so you can approve those, document who approved it, and automate installing the new certificates.
Hey, Cindy, we had another question in the Q&A. It says, what are some considerations teams should do before making any of these changes?
I would always do a backup of my certificate authority. I would always take screenshots of what you're about to change and what you change it to. That way you can fall back if you need to. And if it's a highly used certificate template, something like computers or user certificates, take note of what time you made the change and clicked OK. So any certificates issued between that time and when you reverse the change can be revoked. And if you can, do as much research as possible about whatever the configuration item is you're changing. If you're changing permissions, that's what you'll see, or that's what you'll do if you're trying to remove authenticated users. Put domain users instead. You don't want anybody but your domain users getting a user certificate. Same thing with computers. You only want your domain computers getting a computer certificate.
Thank you, Cindy. As a follow-up question, they also asked, how often should teams evaluate their current certificates issued?
It depends on how many templates a year you create. You may have 3 or 4 months where you create several certificates. Templates, I would do those on a quarterly basis. The worst you can do is go into audit your templates and not have any new ones. The best thing that can happen is you see the new templates and determine if there are vulnerabilities or issues with those templates. So I would look at it at least quarterly with the expectation that you may have work depending on how many new certificate templates are out there. Anything else we've got? Lost my slideshow. Sorry about
Oh,
that.
1 second. Sorry, Cindy. I was just going back and forth between uh, chat and questions, and looks like Kaylin posted one more. How do you convince leadership to prioritize ADCS hardening?
It doesn't take weeks of time, but it is something that you do need to spend quality time doing and have them watch Chris's certifiably dangerous webinar. It scares me every time I think about it.
That is a really good follow-up. So yes, watch the previous session that Chris Russell did, which that recording and his slides will be posted shortly, and that should be enough to scare him to listen to what Cindy's advocating.
Oh, yeah.
Cindy, I think you answered all of the questions beautifully. I don't see anything else in Q&A or chat.
Okay.
So as a reminder to everybody, this session was recorded. We'll get that posted as soon as it's available, along with Cindy's slides. If you have any follow-up questions or discussions you want to engage with Cindy on when you are in the main lobby of FCON, you can go up to the speakers tab and click on that and find Cindy and chat directly with her or ask any follow-up questions. So thank you so much, Cindy.
Thank you.